There was a rhythm to our life, an easy predictability that I had grown to cherish over the years. My wife, Melissa, was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her presence, a skill she used effortlessly as a therapist specializing in couples counseling. Ironically, it was this career of hers that had always given me confidence in the strength of our marriage. She preached honesty and openness to her clients, and I had always believed she lived by those same principles. Our mornings were textbook perfect. Coffee together on the patio, her reading emails on her phone while I flipped through the news. She often had retreats lined up, weekends or extended seminars she claimed were vital for her profession. These events were billed as opportunities for therapists to connect, share techniques, and unwind from the emotional toll of their work. I never questioned them. Why would I? She always came back glowing, refreshed, as though the time away had fortified her. I, on the other hand, thrived on routine. My work as an architect was demanding, yet it left little room for drama. I was the kind of man who preferred things straightforward. My world revolved around lines and angles, hard facts, and clear boundaries. Melissa used to tease me about how I approached everything with the precision of blueprints. "Not everything needs to be calculated, Alex," she'd say with a soft laugh, leaning over to kiss my temple. It was easy to love her then, even easier to trust her. Our friends envied us. They'd marvel at how we still made time for one another after 10 years of marriage, how we never seemed to lose the spark. I always smiled at their comments, secretly proud that we'd managed to preserve something so many others couldn't. Melissa and I had worked at it, after all. Or at least I thought we had. But looking back now, I realize I was living in a fool's paradise. A place where every smile, every kiss, every word of reassurance felt real because I wanted it to be real. The first crack in the facade appeared one lazy evening when I was clearing out old documents from the study. Melissa had left her laptop open on the desk, her inbox visible. I wasn't snooping. I had no reason to, but an email caught my eye. The subject line read, "Itinerary for this weekend's retreat." Curiosity, benign at first, compelled me to click. I wasn't prepared for what I found. The email was vague, almost cryptic, listing a secluded location and a schedule that didn't align with the retreats she'd described before. Words like connection, exploration, and liberation stood out, laced with a strange undertone I couldn't quite place. At the bottom of the email was a link to a private forum, password protected. Melissa had scribbled the password on a sticky note stuck to her laptop screen. Without thinking, I typed it in. What I stumbled upon wasn't the world of professional therapists sharing techniques and growth strategies. It was something else entirely: images, messages, discussions that left me cold. At first, my mind struggled to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be Melissa's world, her sanctuary. Yet there it was, undeniable proof that these retreats weren't what she had told me. That night, I went to bed with my head spinning, the weight of suspicion sinking into my chest. Melissa curled up next to me as she always did, her arm draped over my torso. I stared at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the warmth of her touch with the images burned into my mind. And so it began, the unraveling of the life I thought I knew. The next morning, everything felt off. Melissa moved around the kitchen with her usual grace, humming softly as she poured coffee into our mugs. She looked radiant, even carefree, as she packed her bag for the weekend. I watched her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with what I had seen the night before. "You're staring," she said, smirking as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Something on your mind?" I shook my head, forcing a smile. "Just thinking how lucky I am." She laughed, her eyes lighting up with something that felt genuine. That was Melissa's power, her ability to disarm with a single look, to make you believe in her sincerity. But now her charm felt like a weapon turned against me. As the morning stretched on, I found myself studying her every move. Was there something I'd missed all these years? Signs of deceit? Her phone buzzed on the counter, and for the first time, I felt an overwhelming urge to grab it. But she was quicker, scooping it up and silencing it without so much as a glance in my direction. I let it go. I needed to be smarter about this, more deliberate. Confronting her now would only drive her to cover her tracks. Instead, I decided to dig deeper. When she left for her retreat that afternoon, the house felt impossibly still. I sat in the living room, staring at her laptop on the coffee table. The sticky note with the forum password was gone, but I had already memorized it. Taking a deep breath, I opened the device and navigated back to the site. The forum wasn't just a collection of images and cryptic posts. It was a community. People wrote about their experiences, detailing encounters and arrangements that blurred the line between experimentation and betrayal. Scrolling through the threads, I began to notice usernames that seemed eerily familiar, like whispers of Melissa's life bleeding into this secret world. Then I saw it, her username. I froze, my heart pounding as I clicked on her profile. The posts were vague but unmistakably hers. She described liberating weekends and the thrill of pushing boundaries, all couched in language that made it sound harmless, empowering, even. But buried in the comments were mentions of specific people, locations, and activities that turned my stomach. One thread stood out. It was from a few weeks ago, titled Unforgettable Night in Santa Fe. Her words were casual, almost flippant, as she recounted an encounter with someone named Liam during one of the retreats. She praised his charisma and magnetism, adding a winking comment about their connection that left no room for ambiguity. I slammed the laptop shut, the force of it reverberating through the quiet house. My breathing was ragged, my chest tight as the reality of her betrayal settled over me. She hadn't just lied to me, she had built an entire life outside of ours. A world where I didn't exist, where her vows and promises meant nothing. And worst of all, she didn't seem to feel the slightest hint of guilt about it. I spent the rest of the day pacing the house, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her the moment she walked through the door, to throw her lies in her face and demand answers. But another part, the colder and more calculating side, knew that wouldn't be enough. If she had been hiding this from me for so long, she was capable of talking her way out of it. I couldn't just accuse her. I needed proof, irrefutable evidence that would strip away her lies and expose her for what she truly was. By the time night fell, I had made up my mind. I was going to uncover every secret, every lie, every twisted thread in this web she had spun. And when the time was right, I would tear her world apart. For now, I'd play the part of the unsuspecting husband. But inside, I was already unraveling the facade she had so carefully constructed. And I wasn't going to stop until she paid for what she had done. The hours dragged after Melissa left, my mind cycling through every possible scenario. Who was this Liam? How long had this been going on? Most importantly, how could I uncover the full extent of her betrayal without tipping her off? That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, replaying every moment of our life together, searching for clues I might have missed. Was there a glance that lingered too long? A night she stayed out later than expected? A moment of hesitation in her explanations? Everything seemed tainted now, like a puzzle I had ignored because I didn't want to see the truth. By morning, I had a plan. I started with her social media accounts, scrolling back through years of posts and tagged photos. Melissa was meticulous in crafting her image. The devoted wife, the compassionate therapist, the advocate for holistic self-care. On the surface, everything was polished and perfect, but it felt calculated now, like a distraction from what was lurking beneath. Then I stumbled on something. An old photo from a retreat last year. It was a group picture, Melissa standing in the center with her radiant smile, her arms slung casually around a man who looked vaguely familiar. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a confident grin that oozed charm. I clicked on his profile tag, and there he was, Liam Gallagher. His profile was locked down, but his bio read, speaker, coach, and advocate for personal liberation. My stomach churned. The words mirrored the language I'd seen on the forum. He wasn't just another attendee, he was one of the organizers. I searched for his name online, finding a professional website filled with glossy photos of him leading workshops and giving talks about freedom through connection. The pictures made my skin crawl. Groups of people laughing, embracing, their faces glowing with trust and intimacy. One video featured Liam at one of his retreats, standing before a crowd with an easy, magnetic confidence. His voice was smooth, hypnotic as he spoke about breaking free from societal norms and embracing vulnerability. "For too long," he said, his tone low and earnest. "We've been told to suppress our desires, to live in boxes defined by other people's expectations. But here we're breaking free. We're creating a space where we can be our true selves." The applause in the video was thunderous. I couldn't watch anymore. Everything about him made my blood boil. This man wasn't just another participant. He was the very foundation of Melissa's betrayal. Fueled by anger, I dug deeper. I found references to his retreats on other forums, people raving about the transformative experiences. There were testimonials, too, thinly veiled accounts of encounters that went far beyond self-discovery. These retreats weren't about healing or growth. They were breeding grounds for infidelity, all dressed up in flowery language. My next step was Melissa's laptop. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't resist. I combed through her emails again, searching for more details about her interactions with Liam. Most of it was innocuous, logistical messages about retreats and schedules. But then I found an email chain buried in a folder titled Personal. The messages started with her asking him questions about the retreat's itinerary. His responses were professional at first, but they soon took on a more personal tone. He praised her energy and how she brought so much light to the group. By the fourth email, they were exchanging inside jokes and discussing meeting for coffee outside of the retreat. The last message in the thread stopped me cold. "Looking forward to our next weekend together. I can't stop thinking about Santa Fe. It was unforgettable. Let's make more memories soon." There it was, spelled out in black and white. I slammed the laptop shut, my pulse racing. Any lingering doubts I had were gone. Melissa wasn't just cheating. She was deeply entwined in this man's world, sharing parts of herself that should have belonged to me. But I couldn't confront her yet. I needed more. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through her recent calls and messages. Most of it was mundane: clients, friends, family. But one number kept appearing, unlisted and anonymous. It had no name attached, but I knew instinctively who it was. Now I had a target. I would find Liam and I would find out everything. By the time Melissa returned from her retreat, I would be armed with the truth. And when I was ready, I would destroy her world piece by piece. Melissa came home late Sunday night, her usual vibrant self, glowing with the kind of energy she always seemed to bring back from her retreats. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if I'd eaten, and chatted casually about how fulfilling the weekend had been. I played along, nodding, smiling, masking the roiling anger beneath my skin. But I didn't press her for details yet. Instead, I waited, knowing she would slip up eventually. That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my mind churning with plans. I had already uncovered so much, but there was more to this web of deceit. I was certain of it. The breakthrough came the next morning. While I sat at my desk, pretending to work, my phone buzzed with a new email. It was from an address I didn't recognize, but the subject line sent a jolt of adrenaline through my veins. "You deserve the truth." I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. Was this some kind of trap? A prank? But curiosity won out, and I opened the message. The email was short, almost clinical. "Alex, you don't know me, but I know your wife. You need to understand what she's involved in." Attached are photos and records from the last retreat. "If you need more, I'll be in touch." The attachment icon glared back at me, a flashing beacon of everything I both feared and needed. My hands trembled as I opened the file. What I saw made my stomach churn. The first image was a group photo, taken during the retreat Melissa had just attended. It looked innocent at first glance. Dozens of smiling faces in a serene, outdoor setting. But my eyes locked onto Melissa, standing close to Liam, her hand casually resting on his arm. The next image was anything but innocent. It showed Melissa and Liam in what appeared to be a dimly lit cabin. She was laughing, leaning into him, her hand on his chest. His arm was draped around her waist, His face turned toward her with an intimacy that was unmistakable. The final image made my blood run cold. It was blurry, taken through what looked like a window, but it was clear enough. Melissa and Liam were in bed together, her bare shoulder peeking out from beneath a sheet as she leaned over him, their faces close. I slammed my laptop shut, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't just a fling. This was something deeper, more insidious. She had built a separate life with this man, sharing parts of herself she had sworn belonged to me. The anger came in waves, each one stronger than the last. But beneath it all was a gnawing question. Who had sent me this? And why? Before I could dwell on it, another email arrived from the same sender. Liam isn't who you think he is. Melissa isn't either. I'll be in touch soon. The cryptic message only deepened the mystery, but it also stoked the fire inside me. Whoever this person was, they knew something. Something I needed to uncover before I could act. I decided to let it play out, to wait for their next move. In the meantime, I began piecing together a plan of my own. I couldn't confront Melissa yet. I needed to gather every scrap of evidence, every lie, every betrayal. Only then would I make my move. For now, I'd play the part of the oblivious husband. But inside, I was readying myself for the storm. I would expose them both, Melissa and Liam. And when the truth came out, I would make sure their perfect little world came crashing down. By the time the next email arrived, I had already started connecting the dots. My anonymous informant seemed to know more than just the surface details of Melissa's betrayal. They had insight into her secret world, the retreats, and Liam himself. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The email came late that night, simple and direct. Meet me tomorrow, 8 p.m. Maple Diner. Come alone. For a moment I hesitated. This could be a trap. Someone looking to exploit the situation, or worse, someone connected to Melissa or Liam. But I had no choice. The photos and the cryptic messages had given me just enough to know that I couldn't ignore this lead. At precisely 8 p.m. the following evening, I walked into Maple Diner. The smell of greasy burgers and burnt coffee filled the air as I scanned the booths. At first, I thought I was alone. But then I noticed a woman seated at the far corner, her face obscured by the brim of a hat. She glanced up, locking eyes with me, and gestured for me to sit. "I'm guessing you're Alex," she said, her voice low and steady. "And you're the one who sent the emails," I replied, sliding into the booth. She nodded, her expression unreadable. Up close, she was striking but looked worn, as though she hadn't slept in days. "My name's Erin," she said, "and I know about your wife because I used to be where you are now." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was married to Liam." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. For a moment, I couldn't process what she'd said. "Ex-wife, actually," she continued. "Divorced 2 years ago. But before that, I went through the same thing you're going through. The lies, the gaslighting, the retreats. It's all part of the same game." I didn't know what to say. "So what? You're here out of some sense of revenge?" Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "Not revenge. Call it closure. I want to make sure Liam and women like Melissa don't get away with this anymore." I studied her, trying to gauge her sincerity. "Why now? Why me?" "Because I've been tracking them," she said simply. "Liam doesn't just prey on women at these retreats. He recruits them. He builds connections with women who are unhappy or restless in their marriages, and then he pushes them into his little world. And men like you? We're the collateral damage." She slid a small USB drive across the table. "Everything you need is on here. Messages, videos, financial records. Liam doesn't cover his tracks as well as he thinks." I stared at the drive, feeling a mix of anger and relief. "Why are you helping me?" "Because Liam ruined my life," Erin said, her voice trembling for the first time. "I believed in him, trusted him, and he destroyed everything. If I can stop him from doing the same to someone else, maybe I can sleep at night." I pocketed the USB drive, my mind already racing with possibilities. "There's something else," she said, her expression darkening. "Melissa isn't just some passive victim in this. She's one of his inner circle. She helps recruit new people, convincing them these retreats are harmless, encouraging them to break free from their so-called chains. The words cut deeper than any of the photos or messages I'd seen. Melissa wasn't just unfaithful. She was actively complicit in destroying other marriages. Erin reached into her bag and pulled out a small, nondescript envelope. "You'll want to look at this when you're alone," she said. "It'll give you the full picture." I took the envelope, my hands shaking. "Be careful," she warned as I stood to leave. "Liam isn't just some charismatic fraud. He's dangerous. If you get too close, he won't hesitate to protect himself. And Melissa? She'll protect him, too." I nodded, my jaw tight. "Thanks for the warning. But they don't know who they're messing with." As I walked out of the diner, the envelope and USB drive burning in my pocket, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Clarity. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about dismantling everything Melissa and Liam had built, piece by piece. And I wasn't going to stop until I had nothing left to destroy. Back home, I locked the door behind me and sat at my desk, the USB drive and envelope in front of me. Erin's words echoed in my mind. Melissa isn't just some passive victim. She's one of his inner circle. I started with the envelope. Inside, there were printed photos, receipts, and notes. The first picture was of Melissa and Liam at a bar. Their bodies close, their faces illuminated by the dim glow of neon lights. It wasn't just friendly. There was an intimacy in the way she looked at him, a connection that was deeper than anything I had seen between us in months. Next was a receipt from a high-end boutique, dated just 2 weeks ago. The signature was Melissa's, but the purchase, a designer necklace, was nothing I'd ever seen her wear. Who had she bought it for? Or worse, who had bought it for her? The final note was a typed message, clipped together with a bank statement. "Alex, you should know that Liam and Melissa have a shared account. I suspect it's where they funnel money from the retreats, but you'll need to confirm that yourself. Follow the paper trail." The statement showed a modest balance, but it was the deposits that caught my attention. Regular payments, all from names I didn't recognize. This wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was financial and systematic. Next, I plugged the USB drive into my computer. It contained folders meticulously organized by date. I opened the most recent one, and there it was, a video. My hands trembled as I clicked play. It was grainy, taken from what appeared to be a hidden camera. The setting was a large cabin, the same one I'd seen in the retreat photos. Liam was speaking to a group of people, Melissa standing beside him. She looked radiant, laughing and nodding as Liam spoke about breaking free from conventional relationships. Then the camera angle shifted. The crowd dispersed, pairing off into smaller groups. Liam and Melissa moved toward a bedroom, shutting the door behind them. The camera didn't follow, but the implication was clear. My stomach turned, bile rising in my throat. I forced myself to keep watching, digging through file after file. The further I went, the darker it became. Messages between Melissa and Liam, detailing their plans for future retreats and the couples they'd invited. References to private sessions, special guests, and rules that were disturbingly specific. And then I found it. A folder marked Santa Fe. Inside were photos of Melissa and Liam, intimate and unguarded. There were no veils of professionalism, no disguises. It was her, in his arms, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. That was when it hit me. She wasn't just cheating. She was thriving in this life, reveling in her betrayal. I sat back in my chair, the weight of it all crashing down on me. Erin was right. Melissa wasn't a victim. She had chosen this. She had built this. But now I had everything I needed to destroy her. I spent the rest of the night organizing the evidence, cataloging every file, every photo, every receipt. By morning, I had a clear plan in my mind. First, I would gather more information, financials, communications, anything that could prove the extent of their deceit. Then I would take it to the right people, lawyers, media, anyone who could expose Liam and his empire. But Melissa wouldn't see it coming. When she came home from work that evening, I greeted her like nothing had changed. I cooked dinner, asked about her day, and even kissed her goodnight. But inside, I was a storm, brewing with anger, betrayal, and a thirst for revenge. She thought she had me fooled, that I was blind to her secrets. But soon, she would learn the truth. I wasn't the man she thought I was. And I wasn't going to stop until her world was reduced to ashes. The next day, I started tracking Melissa's movements more closely. I paid attention to her phone habits, the way she kept her laptop locked whenever she left the room. Little details stood out now, her hurried texts, the way she smiled at notifications she tried to hide. I accessed our shared financial records, cross-referencing them with the account Aaron had revealed. Melissa's spending told a story all its own. Unexplained withdrawals, hotel bookings she had never mentioned, and charges to boutique stores I'd never heard of. Each transaction was another nail in the coffin of my trust. But it was the deposits into the shared account with Liam that made my blood run cold. The sums were small but frequent, suggesting a carefully orchestrated system of payouts. Melissa wasn't just cheating. She was profiting. That evening, I left her alone at the dinner table, excusing myself early. In the quiet of my office, I wrote everything down, connecting dots, building a timeline. Every dollar spent, every lie told, every weekend she was working on herself. The picture became clearer with every detail. She was in deep and so was I, but she had no idea I was watching. I decided it was time to test Melissa's reaction, to see if she would betray herself under pressure. Over breakfast, I casually brought up the idea of joining her on one of her retreats. I could use a break, I said, feigning nonchalance. It might be good for us to go together. Her response was immediate, almost too quick. Oh, it's really not your kind of thing, she said, laughing nervously. A lot of emotional work. I doubt you'd enjoy it. I pressed her gently. Still, it might be fun to see what it's all about. Meet some of the people you've been talking about. Her hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. Alex, it's personal. It's better if I go alone. You understand, right? I nodded, pretending to drop the subject, but her reaction told me everything I needed to know. She was hiding something, and now she knew I was curious. That night, I placed a small GPS tracker in her car. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. This was just the beginning. Melissa left for another retreat that Friday evening, her usual calm and cheerful self. She kissed me goodbye at the door, a bag slung over her shoulder. I watched her car disappear down the street, my chest tightening with anger as I thought about what I knew, and what she still believed I didn't. Once she was gone, I opened the tracking app on my phone. The GPS device in her car showed her heading out of the city, taking back roads instead of the main highway. I followed the blinking dot in real time, waiting for it to stop. Finally, after nearly 2 hours of driving, it settled on a location. A large, isolated cabin deep in the woods. Curious, I opened the coordinates in satellite view. The cabin was surrounded by cars, far more than would be expected for a quiet getaway. This wasn't just a retreat, it was a gathering. I clenched my fists, my resolve hardening. I didn't just want to watch anymore. I wanted to go there. I needed to see it for myself. That night, I made my way to the cabin, parking my car down the road and walking the rest of the way through the trees. The night was quiet except for the hum of voices and faint music drifting from the building. I approached carefully, staying hidden in the shadows. The windows glowed with warm light, and I could see figures moving inside. Groups of people laughed and drank, their movements casual and intimate. Then I saw her. Melissa stood near the fireplace, her hand resting on Liam's arm as they spoke with another couple. She looked relaxed, at ease in a way she hadn't been with me in months. The sight made my stomach churn, but I forced myself to stay calm. I pulled out my phone, snapping photos through the window. Evidence, proof of what I already knew. As I moved to get a better angle, my foot landed on a twig, the crack splitting the air. I froze, heart pounding, as one of the men by the door glanced in my direction. I ducked low, waiting, my pulse racing. After a moment, he shrugged and turned back to his drink. I slipped away, retreating into the darkness, my anger now boiling over. The pieces were coming together, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. By the time Melissa returned home on Sunday evening, I had compiled everything: the photos from the cabin, the GPS data, the financial records, and the emails. The weight of the evidence sat like a loaded weapon, ready to fire. She walked in, smiling brightly as she dropped her bag by the door. "Hey, babe," she said, leaning in to kiss me. Her warmth was nauseating now, her ease a mockery of the life we had built. I forced a smile. "How was the retreat?" "It was great," she said, pulling off her coat. "Exhausting, but really fulfilling. I think I had some real breakthroughs this time." Her words were laced with lies, and I struggled to keep my composure. "That's good," I said evenly. "Maybe you can tell me more about it later." Her eyes flickered with something. Nerves, perhaps, but she quickly covered it. "Of course," she said, brushing past me toward the kitchen. I let her settle in, playing the patient husband, but inside, I was sharpening my blade. She had no idea the storm that was about to hit. The next morning, I made my move. Over breakfast, I placed my phone on the table, the screen lit with one of the photos I had taken through the cabin window. Melissa's face paled as her eyes fell on it. "What's this?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. Her hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. "Alex, I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," I said, sliding the phone closer. "I know what you've been doing. I've seen everything, the retreats, Liam, the money." Her face crumbled, panic setting in. "I can explain," she stammered, reaching for me. "It's not what it looks like." I pulled back, my expression cold. "It's exactly what it looks like. You've been lying to me for years, Melissa. But now I have the proof." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her carefully constructed world was beginning to crack, and I wasn't about to stop until it shattered completely. Melissa's panic morphed into desperation as I pressed on. "You've been living a double life," I said, my voice hard. "Liam isn't just some mentor, is he? He's your partner in this, whatever you call it. Don't even try to deny it." Tears welled in her eyes. "Alex, please, you don't understand. It's not what you think. It's not serious." I slammed the stack of printed evidence onto the table. Emails, bank records, and the damning photos from the cabin. "Not serious?" I said, my voice rising. "This looks pretty serious to me." She glanced at the pile, then at me, realizing she had no escape. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she whispered. "That's your excuse?" I leaned closer, my fury barely restrained. "You didn't just betray me, you built a whole life around this. You recruited people, destroyed marriages, funneled money with Liam. You didn't just cheat, Melissa. You conspired." Her tears spilled over, but I felt no sympathy. This wasn't about regret, it was about getting caught. "I've contacted a lawyer," I continued, my voice cold. "I'm filing for divorce, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Your friends, your family, your clients. They'll all see the truth." Melissa's sobs grew louder, but I stood and left the room. She could cry all she wanted. This was only the beginning. In the days that followed, I put the final pieces of my plan into motion. I sent the evidence to key people, Melissa's professional circle, her closest friends, and even a few of Liam's business contacts. The fallout was immediate. Melissa's phone buzzed relentlessly as people confronted her with the truth. She tried to spin it, sending frantic messages to explain herself, but the evidence was too damning. Her career began to unravel. Clients canceled appointments, citing ethical concerns, while colleagues distanced themselves. Liam's retreats faced backlash as word spread about their true nature, and the once polished image he cultivated started to crack. At home, Melissa begged me to stop. "You're destroying my life," she cried, her voice raw. "You destroyed it yourself," I replied, unmoved. "I'm just making sure everyone sees what you really are." Her tears no longer affected me. She had chosen her path, and now she was paying the price. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. Melissa moved out within a week, her belongings packed hastily into boxes. She left without a word, her face pale and hollow, as if the weight of her exposed secrets had drained the life from her. I watched her go from the living room window, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. This wasn't the ending I had envisioned when we first built our life together, but it was the one she had chosen through her actions. The aftermath wasn't easy. The whispers from neighbors, the questions from friends. They all reminded me of the betrayal I had endured. But each time, I held my head high, refusing to let her actions define me. Melissa's world continued to collapse. Liam disappeared into obscurity, his reputation in ruins, while she struggled to rebuild in the shadow of her disgrace. I didn't follow her life after that. I didn't need to. My focus was on myself now. The pain of her betrayal would never fully disappear, but it no longer consumed me. Instead, it became a lesson. Trust is fragile, and love, no matter how strong it seems, can't survive in the shadow of deceit. Standing in the quiet of my now empty home, I allowed myself a final thought of her. Then I turned away, ready to rebuild my life on my terms, without the lies that had once clouded it. It wasn't revenge that gave me closure. It was knowing that I had taken back control.